Welcome back on this Thursday evening. Well, they feed, they shelter, and they offer some of the most colorful views on Earth. Coral reefs around the world attract divers and photographers. Researchers have now studied why we're attracted to coral. One of the biologists involved in the study, Aaron Macneil, Dalhousie University, is with us. Thanks for coming in.
You're welcome.
The study analyzed perceived beauty of coral reefs.
Yeah.
What's perceived beauty?
Well, it's really about understanding the ways in which people see things that are on coral reefs. In our case, we're really looking at the fish involved in the ecosystem and trying to understand, what is it that they see about these places that is beautiful. Now, it might be obvious that it's beautiful. Coral reefs are full of life and all kinds of a diversity of life, but in order to try to use that information in some meaningful way that can promote conservation, for example, we as scientists try to pull apart what is the aspects or what aspects are beautiful in order to make use of them.
There's that old line about, the cute animal has a better chance of survival, has a better chance of getting people to support it and protect it.
Yeah.
Is it the case with coral?
It's absolutely the case, yeah. I pity my lichen biologists that I work with at Dal, but the fact is people really do care about certain dimensions of nature more than others, and part of it is what we call the aesthetic beauty, just how beautiful something is, and that's really what we were quantifying in this study.
You've lived and worked in Australia, which famously has a barrier reef, which would be perhaps what the most famous coral reef on the planet.
Yeah, the largest object visible from space, the largest life object.
So what is the relationship that Australians have with that, and how, or does it play into exactly what you were talking about?
Yeah, so it's a big part of Australian culture and identity. In the mid 20th century, people started going there to look at it as a kind of beautiful object, and now that reef, in terms of tourism, is worth about $6 billion a year to the Australian economy. So for them, it's big money, but it also has become iconic as part of their national identity and something that's very important. And once you have that identity, that people really perceive something as beautiful and they perceive it as something they want to protect as a result, then you end up having people much more engaged in conservation, and that's really what we showed in this.
And we know we have coral reefs around the world. Certainly we have some impressive ones just off our coasts. Mm-hmm. So our thinking still tends, I think, to go to places like the barrier reef. Mm-hmm. What kind of education, what kind of promotion do our own coral reef system need?
Well, here, the coral reefs are very unique in our waters because they're in very deep water, and there aren't that many species of deep water coral, and it's very, very important as fish habitat. And so, when people started trawling for groundfish, cod, haddock, that sort of thing, a lot of those coral beds would have been torn up. So what we see now are kind of remnant coral beds, and they're very, very important for fish habitat, for small fish to recruit and grow bigger that can then become part of the fishery later on.
What is threatening coral reefs around the world?
It's primarily climate change is the number one thing. I mean, coral reefs are kind of right at the difficult end of climate change, which is at the top end. So they kind of have nowhere to go once they inhabit waters up to about 32 degrees in the Red Sea. As the waters warm beyond that, they're entering a zone that just basically doesn't exist anywhere on Earth.
So is that bleaching that we've heard about?
Coral bleaching, exactly. So really hot years, and this year is predicted to be a really hot year, and we'll see what happens. But in really hot years, you get sort of waves of coral bleaching that go around the world, and that's when the corals expel these algae that give them their color and turn white. And then if the algae don't come back into the body of the coral loses that energy source that the algae produces, and they eventually die.
Can they recover?
They can, yeah. And a lot of reefs are they're alive. They're motivated to keep growing.
Right.
The problem is that if, as is predicted, temperatures are too hot for too long and too often, then you're going to just erode their ability to recover by the time that the next event happens.
So looking globally, what would be the general state of coral reefs?
Well, in general, it's not good, simply because we've had so much hot water in the last decade. A lot of places have proved to be more resilient than we thought. But again, the more disturbances we have, the more hot years we have,
Mm-hmm.
the worse it's going to be in the long term.
And again, that plays into everything in terms of sea life, right? And we know we need that for fishery, and we know we need that for others. There are marine protected areas.
Mm-hmm.
Is coral playing having an impact on the expansion of those?
Well, coral, it depends. Often coral, the site of very beautiful coral or very beautiful fish is where people tend to want to protect. And that's sort of one of the things that we kind of show in this particular study, is that the more beautiful things are, the more likely you are to protect them. And that applies to both the fish and the coral. The bigger the diversity of life that you have there, the more spectacular it is.
Does that make it tougher for our own because they're in such deep waters? They're not as accessible?
Well, in terms of thinking about beauty, it is hard because it's coral that is generally inaccessible. But with things like remotely operated vehicles, we do get video coming back from these very deep water areas, and people can see how beautiful and complex that they are. So
let me go off topic here. Normally, when we have you in, we're talking about sharks.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't let you go without asking you this. It's the 50th anniversary of Jaws. Yeah. Has that done more to help or hinder the serious study of the predators?
Oh, in terms of serious study, it's done nothing but help, I would say. If you talk to most shark biologists now in the world, I would say 75 to 80% of them became scientists because of that movie. It just captivated people's imagination so much that many, many people will say, I saw Jaws and then had my career after that.
Okay, so that narrative that nothing was more destructive for sharks than Jaws may be a bit of a misnomer.
Well, in the scientific community, it was very important. I think for people catching them, they often would kill them. But that happened before Jaws. And I think Peter Benchley, before he died, he really was very hard on himself about having written that book. But in the long run, it's definitely generated a lot of great science.
Yeah. Always great science when you come in, Aaron Macneil. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Doug.
We'll take a break. We'll be back with plenty more of your local news after this.